The marble floors of the Blackstone Tower gleamed under the morning sun, but no one noticed the woman who made them shine. Maria Gonzalez, 45, with calloused hands and graying hair tucked under a worn bandana, pushed her cleaning cart through the executive floor at 5 a.m., invisible to the world that would soon fill these halls. She had been cleaning these offices for 15 years, sending every penny home to support her 3 children through college in Mexico. The weight of her sacrifice showed in the permanent curve of her shoulders, the way her fingers ached in the cold morning air, and the dreams she whispered to herself in the empty hallways, dreams in 12 different languages that no one knew she spoke. Alexander Blackstone, 38, stood at the pinnacle of corporate success. With his tailored Italian suits that cost more than Maria made in 6 months and cold blue eyes that had never truly seen suffering, he had built his empire on the backs of those he deemed beneath him. That morning, he arrived early to prepare for a board meeting that would determine the fate of hundreds of employees he'd never meet. His polished Oxford shoes clicked against the floor Maria had just finished cleaning, leaving marks she would have to polish away again. He was brilliant, ruthless, and spoke 7 languages fluently, a fact he loved to flaunt at charity galas where he'd write checks to causes he'd never truly understood. His penthouse mansion overlooked the city like a throne overlooks its kingdom. His garage housed 7 cars he rarely drove, and his heart, many said, had been replaced by a calculator long ago. What he didn't know was that the invisible woman he'd passed 1,000 times held the key to his redemption. The Blackstone Tower pierced the Los Angeles skyline like a glass and steel monument to ambition. 50 floors of dreams and broken promises. On the 47th floor, where Maria worked, floor-to-ceiling windows offered views that cost millions, views of city waking up, of lives being lived, of stories untold. The executive suite smelled of Italian leather and Blue Mountain coffee that cost $50 a pound, a world away from the cramped apartment Maria shared with 2 other cleaning ladies in East L.A., where the smell of rice and beans cooking was a luxury they could afford only twice a week. This morning, fog rolled in from the ocean, wrapping the building in a ghostly embrace, as if nature itself was setting the stage for what was about to unfold. The city below disappeared, leaving only the tower floating in a sea of white, isolated from the world, much like the man who owned it. Maria was emptying the trash in the conference room when she heard Alexander's voice booming from his office. The door carelessly left ajar. He was on speakerphone with his CFO, James Morrison, and their laughter cut to the morning silence like broken glass. "You know what kills me?" Alexander said, his voice dripping with contempt. "These people clean our offices for 20 years and can barely string together a sentence in English. It's pathetic." Maria's hand stilled on the wastebasket, her heart pounding. "I'll give you my entire salary if you can translate this," he mocked, then switched to fluent Mandarin. Discussing plans to fire half the janitorial staff to increase quarterly profits by 0.3%. He detailed how they blame it on efficiency optimization and how the remaining staff would have to work twice as hard for the same pay. "The beauty is," he continued in Mandarin, "they'll never even know what hit them. They can't understand us." But Maria understood every word. Her hands trembled as she continued cleaning, her mind racing back 25 years to a classroom in Mexico City where she had stood before eager students, teaching them the beauty of languages, the power of communication across cultures. Before life had broken her dreams into pieces too small to reassemble, before her husband Roberto died in a construction accident and left her with 3 young children and mountains of medical debt, Maria had been Dr. Maria Elena Gonzalez, professor of comparative linguistics at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. She had written papers on the evolution of Sino-Tibetan languages, had been invited to conferences in Beijing and Shanghai. But death and debt had translated her life into something unrecognizable, had forced her to trade her doctor for a mop, her lectures for silence. The next morning, Alexander arrived to find a note on his desk, placed precisely in the center of his leather portfolio. It was written in perfect Mandarin, each character drawn with the precision of a calligrapher. "You owe me your salary, MG." His face drained of color as he read it 3 times, his mind struggling to process the impossibility. Security footage showed only Maria had been there, the timestamp reading 5:47 a.m. His hands shook as he called security, then stopped. If this got out, If anyone knew the cleaning lady had understood his private conversations, the implications were staggering. How many deals had he discussed in foreign languages, thinking himself safe? How many secrets had he carelessly revealed? When he confronted her that evening, she was on her knees, scrubbing a coffee stain from the carpet outside his office. He expected broken English and submission, perhaps tears and begging. Instead, Maria slowly stood, her arthritis making the movement painful, and met his gaze with eyes that held depths he'd never noticed. "Mr. Blackstone," she said in flawless Mandarin, her Beijing accent perfect, "you made a promise." Then, as his jaw dropped, she switched to French. "Promises should be kept, don't you think?" Then German, especially when made by honorable men. Then Arabic, the Damascus dialect he learned from a Syrian tutor. "Though I wonder if you know what honor means." "How?" was all he could manage, his voice a whisper. Maria switched to English, but kept her accent thick, a shield she'd worn for 15 years. "You see what you expect to see, Mr. Blackstone. A Mexican cleaning lady with broken English. It never occurred to you that I might be more." She paused, studying his face with the analytical eye of a linguist reading subtext. "I speak 12 languages fluently. Poverty doesn't erase education. It just makes it invisible. Like me. If you believe that every person has a story worth discovering, maybe it's time to join us on this journey." Intrigued, humiliated, and strangely fascinated, Alexander made a deal that his lawyers would later call insane. If Maria could prove her claim through formal testing at UCLA's linguistics department, he would honor his careless promise, his entire annual salary of $3.2 million. But Maria surprised him again. "I'll agree," she said, switching to Japanese, a language he didn't speak, forcing him to admit ignorance. "But I have a condition." She returned to English. "During the week before the test, you work with me, every shift. You'll see the building through my eyes, meet the people you've never noticed. Then you'll understand why I need the money." Pride battled with curiosity in Alexander's chest. He thought of refusing, of finding some legal way out of this absurd situation. But something in Maria's eyes, not defiance, not anger, but a quiet strength that reminded him of his grandmother who cleaned houses to put his father through school, made him nod. "Fine," he said, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. 1 week. That night, for the first time in 20 years, Alexander Blackstone entered the Blackstone Tower through the service entrance. The first shift began at 4:30 a.m. Alexander, wearing borrowed coveralls that smelled of industrial detergent, met Maria in the supply room in the basement. Around them, 40 other members of the night cleaning crew, prepared for their shifts, men and women from El Salvador, Guatemala, Philippines, Ethiopia, speaking in languages Alexander recognized but couldn't understand. Maria introduced him simply as Alex, new guy, training with me. She didn't mention he owned the building, and in the fluorescent light of the basement, without his suit and title, he looked surprisingly ordinary. "First rule," Maria said, handing him a mop that seemed heavier than it should be. "You're invisible now. People will look through you, around you, but never at you. Don't take it personally. It's not about you anymore." As they cleaned the first floor bathrooms, a job that made Alexander's stomach turn, Maria told him about her colleague Rosa, who was studying for a citizenship test in the supply closet during breaks. About Dmitri, the Russian engineer who drove a cab during the day and cleaned at night to pay for his daughter's leukemia treatment. About Chun, who sent every penny home to China where his parents believed he was a successful American businessman. By the third night, Alexander's hands were raw and blistered. His back screamed with each movement, and his worldview was crumbling. Maria didn't just speak 12 languages. She used them as bridges. During their shift, she translated a medical form for Rosa, Portuguese to English, helped Dmitri write a letter to his daughter's doctor, Russian to English, and mediated a dispute between two co-workers, Spanish and Tagalog to English and back. She was, Alexander realized, the invisible thread holding together a workforce he'd never bothered to see. "Why don't you get a better job?" he asked her in their break, sharing the plain sandwich Maria had brought. She always packed two, somehow knowing he'd forget to bring food. "With your skills, your education." Maria's laugh was soft and sad. You think I haven't tried? I'm 45, Mexican, and my degree isn't recognized here. I applied to over 200 positions when I first arrived. The best offer I got was to be a bilingual cashier at a grocery store, paying $2 less than this job. Here, at least, I have health insurance for when my arthritis gets bad. Here, I can work nights and volunteer during the day. Volunteer? At the free clinic, translating for patients who don't speak English. At the immigration center, helping people fill out forms. At my church, teaching children their parents' languages so they don't lose their heritage. She paused, studying his face. Languages aren't just words, Mr. Blackstone. They're bridges between hearts, keys to dignity, weapons against invisibility. We have more stories like this coming. So don't forget to hit the like button and turn on notifications. On the fourth night, something shifted. Alexander found himself arriving early, bringing coffee for the crew. Good coffee, not the break room instant they usually drank. He learned their names, their stories. He discovered that Jose had been a cardiologist in Honduras, that Fatima had run a school in Somalia before the war, that Park had been a prosecutor in South Korea before immigrating. The Blackstone Tower, he realized, was cleaned by an invisible army of former professors, doctors, engineers, and artists, people whose credentials meant nothing here, but whose dignity remained intact. Maria showed him her most precious possessions during a break. 3 photographs kept in a plastic sleeve in her wallet. Lucia, she said, pointing to a young woman in a cap and gown, graduated summa cum laude from medical school last year. She's doing her residency at Johns Hopkins now. Her finger moved to the second photo. Miguel, aerospace engineer at Boeing. And Carlos, she touched the last photo with infinite tenderness, finishing his PhD in international law at Yale. They must be so proud of you, Alexander said, and for the first time he meant it. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. They think I work in an office. I let them believe it. What would it do to them, knowing their mother scrubs toilets to pay for their dreams? So I lie in 12 languages and pray they never find out. The test day arrived with a kind of crisp Los Angeles morning that made the city look washed clean. UCLA's linguistics department had never seen anything like it. A billionaire CEO insisting on formal testing of a cleaning lady's language skills, with millions at stake. Dr. Elizabeth Chun, the department chair, had assembled a panel of native speakers and linguistic experts. Intrigued despite herself, Maria arrived in her best dress, navy blue, carefully pressed, bought at a thrift store but worn with the dignity of a queen's robes. Alexander sat in the back of the room, having insisted on observing. He barely recognized her without her cleaning uniform, seeing for the first time the professor she had been, the intellectual she remained. The testing began with Spanish, her native tongue, flowing like music as she discussed the evolution of Latin American literature. Then English, switching between academic precision and colloquial comfort. Mandarin came next, and Dr. Chen's eyes widened as Maria not only demonstrated fluency, but corrected a minor tonal error in the test question. French followed, Maria reciting Baudelaire and then explaining the social-linguistic differences between Parisian and Quebecois French. German technical terminology flowed into Arabic poetry, with Maria explaining the root system that connected Semitic languages. She switched to Japanese, discussing the sociological implications of honorific usage, then Portuguese, comparing Brazilian and European variations. Russian literature gave way to Hindi philosophy, Korean economic terms to the ancient beauty of Nahuatl, her indigenous language that predated all the others. But it was her final presentation that silenced the room. In each language, Maria had prepared a 2-minute presentation on the same theme, dignity in labor. She spoke of the janitor who ensures surgeons operate in sterile environments, the night cleaner who makes morning meetings possible, the invisible army that keeps civilization running. Each language gave the message different colors, different emotions, but the core remained, every person deserves to be seen. Dr. Chen was the first to break the silence. In 30 years of linguistics, she said, her voice shaking, I have never seen such a display. Dr. Gonzalez, and I use that title deliberately, you don't just speak these languages, you inhabit them. Alexander stood slowly, his movement drawing all eyes. "Maria," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "I owe you an apology worth more than any salary." He pulled out his phone, calling his CFO on speaker. "James?" "Yes, I'm here with Dr. Maria Gonzalez. Effective immediately, she's to receive my full salary for this year. And James, we're restructuring the entire company pay scale. Living wages for everyone. Yes, everyone, especially the cleaning staff. Would you have seen the value in those society overlooks? I'd love to know what you think." The boardroom had never seen anything like the meeting that followed. Maria, now with a voice and a platform, presented a comprehensive plan for corporate transformation, not just pay raises, though those came first, but education programs, healthcare expansion, and paths to advancement for all employees. Some board members balked at the cost until Maria switched to Mandarin, then Arabic, then Russian, explaining in the languages of international business how investing in workers created loyalty, reduced turnover, and ultimately increased profits. "You want to know why your Silicon Valley campus has 40% annual turnover?" she asked, switching back to English. "Because you treat people like replaceable parts instead of human beings. I've been here 15 years. I know every secret, every scandal, every midnight meeting. I could have sold that information 1,000 times, but I didn't. That's the loyalty you buy with dignity." The revelation of what Maria knew, 15 years of overheard conversations in 12 languages, sent a chill through the room. She had inadvertently become the most dangerous person in the building, holding secrets that could topple the company. Instead of wielding that power for destruction, she offered it for transformation. 6 months later, Blackstone Industries made headlines as the first Fortune 500 company to guarantee true living wages to all staff and contractors. The initial stockholder panic gave way to surprise as productivity soared, turnover plummeted, and innovation flourished. Turns out, when people don't worry about choosing between medicine and rent, they bring their whole selves to work. Maria accepted the position of Chief Ethics Officer, but with conditions. She still arrived at 5 a.m., spending her first hour with the cleaning crew, maintaining the relationships that grounded her. Her office, on the 47th floor, with those $1 million views, remained open to any employee who needed translation help, mediation, or just someone who would see them. The program she instituted was revolutionary in its simplicity. Every executive had to work 1 week annually in entry-level positions. Every entry-level employee could access education programs, with full scholarships for degrees. The company established an on-site clinic with multilingual staff. Most radically, they created a position Maria insisted on, Chief Visibility Officer, whose sole job was ensuring no employee remained invisible. Alexander changed, too, in ways that surprised everyone, including himself. He learned not just humility, but humanity. He still worked brutal hours, still drove hard bargains, but now he knew the names and stories of every person who kept his empire running. He learned Spanish from Rosa, Russian from Dmitri, and even attempted Nahuatl with Maria, who laughed at his pronunciation but appreciated the effort. The moment that captured their transformation came during an international conference call with Tokyo. Technical difficulties arose, and the translator was stuck in traffic. Before panic could set in, Maria stepped forward, conducting the entire negotiation in flawless Japanese. But it was Alexander who truly surprised the room. "Before we proceed," he said in carefully practiced Japanese, "I want to acknowledge Dr. Gonzalez, whose expertise makes this possible." It was the first time in 15 years anyone had called her doctor in a professional setting. A year passed. Maria's children visited for her 46th birthday, and Alexander insisted on hosting the celebration at the office. When Lucia, Miguel, and Carlos arrived, expecting to see their mother's administrative office, they found instead a corner suite with their mother's degrees, retrieved from storage and professionally reframed, hanging on the walls. The truth came out in tears and embraces. 3 successful children finally understanding the depth of their mother's sacrifice. "You should have told us," Lucia whispered, her doctor's hands holding her mother's work-worn ones. "Would you have gone to school knowing?" Maria asked, "Would you have reached for the stars knowing your mother was on her knees cleaning floors?" My invisibility was my gift to you. Carlos, the soon-to-be lawyer, found his voice first. Your visibility is our gift back. The Blackstone Tower still pierces a Los Angeles skyline, but something fundamental has changed. In the lobby, a plaque in 12 languages reads, "Every person who enters here has a story worth hearing." It was Maria's idea, but Alexander who insisted it be carved in marble from the same quarry as the floors that still gleam under the morning sun, now cleaned by people who are seen, valued, and heard. The executive floor tells its own story now. Maria's office, with its door always open, has become a pilgrimage site for employees seeking guidance, translation, or simply recognition. Her desk holds dictionaries in 20 languages, she kept learning, photos of her children at their graduations, and a small framed note in Mandarin, the one that started it all. Alexander's office changed too. Gone were the vanity photos with celebrities and politicians, replaced by pictures of the night cleaning crew, the maintenance staff, the security guards, the invisible made visible. He kept one photo on his desk that visitors always asked about. Him and Maria, both in cleaning coveralls, holding mops, taken during that transformative week. The romance that bloomed surprised no one but them. It began with language lessons. Alexander determined to learn Spanish properly, Maria teaching him the difference between textbook conjugations and the living language of the heart. Their first date was at a small Mexican restaurant in East L.A. where Maria was a regular, with the owner's eyes widened seeing her arrive in a dress instead of work clothes, accompanied by a man who struggled through ordering in broken Spanish, but whose eyes never left her face. "Why him?" her friends asked. "After everything?" "Because he learned to see," Maria answered simply. "Do you know how rare that is? To truly change?" He could have fought the test results, could have found legal loopholes. Instead, he chose transformation. That takes a courage I didn't expect to find in a corporate tower. They married 2 years later, a small ceremony that somehow made the society pages because of the guest list. CEOs beside janitors, doctors beside security guards, all equal in their celebration of love that transcended every barrier society had built. Maria kept her small apartment for 6 months after the wedding, needing to process the change gradually, until Alexander surprised her by buying the entire building and transforming it into affordable housing for immigrant families. The wedding speeches were given in 12 languages, with translation provided by the bride herself. But it was Alexander's speech that made headlines, delivered in halting but heartfelt Nahuatl. "You gave me new eyes to see the world. You taught me that wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in dignity. That power isn't about being above others, but lifting others up. You translated my heart from a language of greed to a language of grace." The impact rippled beyond Blackstone Industries. Other companies, shamed or inspired, began implementing similar programs. Maria was invited to speak at conferences, arriving in designer suits, but always mentioning her cleaning coveralls, never letting anyone forget where she came from. She established the Invisible No More Foundation, providing scholarships for immigrant workers' children and funding programs that recognize foreign credentials. But perhaps the most telling moment came 3 years later, during a routine morning at the office. Alexander arrived early, as had become his habit, joining the cleaning crew for coffee before the executives arrived. Maria found him in the supply room, teaching Jose's son advanced calculus. The boy was struggling in school, too ashamed to ask for help. "You know," Maria said, watching her husband patiently explain derivatives to a teenager whose English was still developing, "I think you finally understand." "Understand what?" Alexander asked, not looking up from the problem set. "The translation I was really teaching, not between languages, but between hearts, between the seen and unseen, between who we think we are and who we could become." The boy solved the problem, his face lighting up with understanding. Alexander high-fived him, then checked his watch. "Board meeting in an hour," he said to Maria. "Want to terrify them with some unexpected Swahili." Maria laughed, the sound echoing through the building that had once trapped her in invisibility, but now stood as a monument to transformation. "Actually," she said, "I was thinking we'd try something really radical today." "What's that?" Plain English, but with the truth translated clearly, that every person in this building matters equally. She paused, then added with a smile, "Though they give us trouble, I've been practicing my Mongolian." The Blackstone Tower still reaches toward the sky, its glass and steel unchanged. But inside, in the hearts of those who work there, a translation has occurred that no dictionary could capture. From indifference to compassion, from blindness to sight, from a place where people were invisible to a home where everyone is seen. As for the company's profits, they soar beyond all projections, proving what Maria had always known. When you translate dignity into action, when you see the invisible and hear the unheard, the returns are infinite. The cleaning lady who spoke 12 languages had taught a billionaire the most important phrase in any tongue: "You matter." And in a world that so often renders people invisible, perhaps that's the most revolutionary translation of all.